something that, okay, I'm going to a third grade room, they're in this unit, let me read over this, so I know what to look for. I don't expect them to be masters of it all. That's not fair.
Right.
But I do think that we need to support them with that. I'm not out to blame, I'm not a blamer, we just fix the problem, We don't need to figure out why there's a problem or who did it.
Right, just identify what it is.
Just fix the
and
problem
move
and,
forward.
I mean, sometimes we need to figure out why there's a problem so that we can get to the root cause of it, but I'm really not looking at blaming someone, I'm really just trying to say, let's just fix the problem, And there's a problem there. And I think it comes into play with classroom assessment and with teacher assessment. When we're assessing our teachers, this is the kind of data I want administrators saying, when you come to your grade level meetings or we come to our department meetings, bring some of this data. Because that's where we're looking at the evaluation of domains 1 and 4 of the Danielson framework, is your professionalism. How do you use data to inform your instruction? Do they know how to lead those kinds of conversations? How do you adapt your instruction based on that data? How do you prepare for your next lessons based on that data? How do you react as a professional when you look at your data? Do you consider changing what you do, or do you say, well, that's their fault, they should have studied harder? Because that's what happens a lot of the time. And I think it's the frustration of there's so much changing right now. We're all kind of feeling that drowning in work.
Sure. Do you do this format? Would you do this periodically with different groups at a
Yes.
time?
I wouldn't
Or is
evaluate
this the whole-
everybody all at once.
Because I'm if you're doing the plus pass, it's 30, for me, it's going to be 33 and above next year. And I'm I can't do that. So
I'd say that, there are small activities that we do for maybe 5-10 minutes a day. And then I watch this group today, this group, or we even have stations that they rotate through, and one station is me. So that day, they go from this station to this station to this station to this station, and when they're at the station by me, I evaluate. It's kind of more of a interactive way of assessing.
sorry, I'm just trying to think how high school
The logistics.
to do that.
I think stations are realistic at the high school level. I want to caution that I like having people work in learning buddies of 2 or 3 with a group, because any more than that, and it's the social hour, 2s and 3s will have a conversation with each other. But when you have more than 3, then they break into side conversations. That's natural. And sometimes the side conversations are perfectly on target, and sometimes the side conversations are not. So to prevent that, we practice more language when we're in a smaller group, because there's only one other person to talk to when we do it. So even with these, I'd say when you're observing, 4, 5, 6, I can observe 6 kids at a group now, if it's something I made and I know it. I mean, I've gotten good at that, but I know that that's not realistic. 4 is a nice size, 4, 5.
I think we were just having a conversation about this and how that would look with multiple adults in the room, and how Dropbox or something like
Yes.
that would be helpful so that you can both access the document, because
Or if it's an app.
That's
It would be nice if our grade
Like a
books
Google
could
Doc.
incorporate a place where you don't get points on something.
Yes.
I would like to be able to put an initial in this so that the parents could go look and see, these are the things that I've observed with your
Right.
student, because it's just so much transferring data,
Yeah.
which is the
and then
difficult part.
communicating what that
Right.
data represents.
We're gonna work on this. He has friends. We're gonna.
I've got a long list of things I need in that app, just so
No pressure, Joe.
Then you go into the networking issues, if you think of every student connected to an app, a node, a single network node holds 250 people, one node. So how many classes is there? There are 30 classes, that's about 5 classes. And how many classes do you have? So we're gonna multiply that by how many, now your network is gonna, if you don't have a big enough bandwidth, your connection is gonna be useless. Click.
Yes, you're right.
Right.
That's a good point.
So you have to,
It's
we
just
could-
a
we
very
could do-
complex issue.
Yeah, it's very complex. I know my district is going through that issue right now.
What district are you in?
201, it's a sister of.
So we have a couple more examples, and then I thought we'd take a break. Or do you want to take a break now, and then we'll come back for the examples? What are you thinking?
I'd like to see the examples
I'd
first,
like
we
to
can
see
talk
the
about them during
Okay.
the break.
That sounds like a plan. So, I should click.
Unless you're ready for a break.
I'm fine. I could go on and on. I tend to be a talker. Okay. This is actually, I have an old one. I was trying to put a PDF in the new one in last night, and it doesn't really, it didn't work very well, so this is an old template, but,
Can I ask one more question before
Sure.
we move on? The second page looks just like the first page with the, difference of,
The
there are
tables.
different orders and no table. Is that for younger kids that wouldn't have that?
right. Or sometimes it just doesn't make sense to include the table. But really, K-3 doesn't do much with tables, so they really only have the 5 modes.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure I wasn't missing something.
Not that they couldn't use tables at that level, but it's just not typical.
And then I'm not seeing this one in our packet. Was
Yeah.
it somewhere else?
This one, let me, yeah, it's in there, it's just that it's not filled in.
Oh,
It
it's the last
is
page.
the last page, and it looks like nothing, because it's a template.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
So,
It's just the lines are.
this is the skeleton piece. Now, when I'm making a paper and pencil assessment, and I actually, I think, no, I'm gonna show you one, because I'm gonna bring one up. This one's not one of my favorites. I have a better one. I used it in the webinar. So I'm gonna make that one.
I will tell you, Tom, I tried to do that once with the filling out a table that you made and sell that in each standard and then how they did on that particular line. And it took us about 20 hours to grade one test and then we just decided we didn't do that anymore. Like we took the ISAT rubric and we graded smaller tests that were responses like that and we did the short responses.
Okay, let me show you, just to get a good one. This is the one I used on the webinar, so it's on the same website.
When did you start using SkyDrive?
I love SkyDrive. Let's see here. So this is the skeleton for an assessment. Yeah, I was trying to cut and paste it.
Can we make it a little bigger in that bottom right corner? If you change that 100% to like 150, it will be much easier to see. Please, thank you. Awesome.
Okay, so here's what I do. Whenever I make a paper and pencil assessment, I think, okay, what do I want them to do with this assessment? So I list them down the side. Now I have learned to write the assessment before I fill in the numbers, actually. I kind of give myself a guess how many I want of them. But I always screw up the numbers and have to redo them anyway. Like, I'll decide, oh, I want to do this 1A, 1B, 1C, and then so just from my own experience, I don't bother to fill the numbers in until after I've written the assessment. But these are the different things I want them to do on the assessment, okay? And I can send you this because,
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
you can't have this one. It's probably gonna be, I'm gonna give it to the state model group as a sample, and it'll probably be part of one of the 6th grade
Why's
units.
it go from
Those are the,
The learning
questions.
targets?
Hey.
Those are the problem numbers. And then let me show you the assessment, the actual task, which is,
Did you have, because you clicked off of it before I could see it, did you have some problems that were in multiple?
yes, a couple that work. So then I give them the assessment,
Is this a summative or a formative assessment?
whichever you want it to be. It's a model, so you can do it as
Oh.
either one. You can, it's a model.
Really?
Because it's very,
Skill-based.
Skill
So
based.
that's because this unit has a lot of procedural,
Okay.
you still have some.
right.
But then we've got, these are not the great cut, I mean, these are the, here's the, then we try to add in some questions that were a little bit meatier, like the last one. That's a little bit more real-world application, where they're supposed to use formulas to find volume and surface area of the cube. That's one of their expectations. So we gave them the formulas, and we said, find the volume and the surface area. But we're not telling them anything more than that, okay? Again, that's the way the standard is. We actually pulled that sample right from illustrative mathematics, or right from the standard stuff, because this is one, is getting a little bit richer, okay? So we're taking, what they're supposed to find expressions, or explain that 2 expressions are equivalent. So find 2 expressions in the box that are equivalent and explain why they are equivalent, or show why they are equivalent. And then they have to do that twice. So we're getting a little richer. Unfortunately, the unit that this is for is more procedural. It's heavily procedural. Not unfortunately, it's just sometimes it is.
What grade level?
This is 6th.
This is how our tests were, and we have gotten fully away from this.
Well, I think we still
have
I mean,
procedural
there are,
expectations.
but when you look at the percentage of the exam that needs to be weighted skill, you know, like the rigorous, in this, what you're showing me is heavy on the procedure and skill.
Because the unit is procedural. Most of the expectations in that unit are procedural. That's just the way they're
Can I
stated.
see the target for that?
Yeah, let me go down. They had defined, this is the last part of it, they had defined two expressions that were, and create equivalent expressions. So part of that standard is that they determine if they are, and then the other part is that they create. Like I said, this is a unit that's sixth grade, and when we looked at it, it was funny. I meet with my county group, and we meet by grade level. And I had said to them, what are you guys struggling with? And, you know, give me topics that you're struggling with, assessments, and they said, we were struggling with this unit. And the reason why they were struggling with this unit is because it's not that rich. So I said, you know, when I sat down and I made the stuff for it, I said to them, the reason why you're struggling with this is because it is as basic as you see. So here's some examples. There were, this is one example of an assessment that we made for it, but it's not the only assessment we had. We also had an observational checklist for the concept of expression. But there are times, I want to say that there's still a time and a place for paper and pencil calculations. And this is the example. So that's what the skeleton is for. The other assessment that we had in that unit is this one where we gave them these cards. And we had them, I'll show you the checklist. There's the checklist for it. Where we were saying, first they had to sort the cards by sum, difference, product, and quotient. What did they represent? Then they had to identify factors, you know, and this was at a small group setting. So we'd say, pull out one of yours and tell me, identify the factors in it. Each kid would have to, you know, pull out an expression and say, these are the factors of this expression, these are the factors of this. This is a product, and these are the factors. We also were trying to see that in some of those, we wanted them to look at, you know, x plus 4 is a factor because you've got x plus 4 times 6. So see that, those, you know, as one entity, which I think is, we strategically made those cards for that. That's more conceptual. But truthfully, this unit, the way it's clustered together, that's it. There's not much to it.
But that's
So-
good that you're saying that, because I think part
I
of the
feel a lot
dilemma
better,
is
yeah.
everyone thinks, oh, we have to have it with all these applications, and no, you don't. Some
Sometimes
things
you-
are just very
sometimes
basic,
it's
and it is
Well,
what
but
it is.
I don't agree that you put the formula on the exam. I think that there should be a formula sheet that the students can choose to use.
And that's possible to do too. This is, you know, it's not like, this is a model.
Right.
So I include it there because it's a model that, I'm not saying you have to always have this formula sheet with you.
I was under the impression that Common Core and Park would not be providing any, formulas.
No, they do have formulas for some levels.
And is that available to us yet?
Yeah, it's in the park documents, they tell you what they're giving.
Okay, at what level they'll get
Yes.
which formulas?
Do they, when they're given the formulas, is it, like the ISAT where there's a formula sheet?
You know,
Or
I'm
is
not
it embedded
positive.
in the problem?
I'm not positive.
Okay.
I have to look that up.
Because if it's a
Yeah.
separate sheet, the next question is, can that just be the standard sheet for 7th grade, you know?
Well, and,
And we wanna make our assessments the same way that it is there.
yeah, that's a good question. I'm gonna look that up because we're
That
gonna
would
be
be
working on
great.
that next
Can we
week.
add that to our?
Because
goals?
when I-
Sure.
Because the focus of the unit is not on, you need to know the formula for volume, it's, can you apply what you know about your order of operations and your properties of exponents to arrive at a solution?
Yeah.
So that doesn't matter if you're giving them a formula there, that's not the objective that you are assessing, it's can you do this?
Yeah.
So that's fine, and that's why it's there.
But
So
what if
in
they
the
choose a-
geometry unit.
If it's a
not-
different one where they should
Right, in the geometry
know it,
unit, I would
that's-
give
they
them the
would give
formulas.
it to
They're
them.
supposed to know the
This is a
formulas.
manipulation of it, that's
Yeah.
why it's there.
If
And now,
I-
when we look at these are the 4 standards that were in this unit, okay, this 6th grade unit. The unit is on expressions, and really, there's not a lot to this unit because
Right,
it's only
even
those
the
4
verbs they
expectations.
use, you have pointed out your verbs before, it's just,
Right,
Identify.
identify, evaluate, where in other ones, there's no, you don't even
There's
have
no
the word
understand.
understand, or
Right.
even interpret, so I mean, yeah, you're very tied to what this, which is nice, it's nice to know we have standards that have some number sense, and I don't want skill to go away.
Right, it's a balance.
Yes.
So this is one of, this is where that balance of procedure comes into play. But you're not gonna spend a ton of time on this unit because it's not,
Should be quick.
yeah, it's a quicker unit. But this is the way we're gonna work our work next week, is we're gonna take our unit and say, okay, here are the standards in the unit, what are the conceptual expectations? Does that standard, like the read, write, evaluate, expressions of the letters, stands for numbers, that's the one where I can see that some of that is conceptual, some of it's procedural, some of it is application. So that spans the whole gamut. But the rest of it really is, it's a totally procedural unit. And that's the way, that's the expectations. So honestly, we were laughing at this one because I said, it's hard to do a unit just on expressions because you don't, that's so contrived. Because really, you take an expression and you move them right to the equation or the inequality level to solve them. That's where the application comes into play. So it is a very, it's a stepping stone unit. It's a unit that leads to another one, which is why equations follows right after this in the 6th grade plan. So that's the target. I think somebody asked me to see the target. That's why they're so lame. Is that, sorry, but it's totally lame. Okay, so this is one that's an old one that we had. And I put that, pasted it in because I had the PDF and it worked, but I don't like it. So then they just match it up. The key to this idea of the skeleton is that whatever the skeleton is, when they're done taking the assessment, the kids go through and they circle which questions they've got right. And then they say, what did I do well on, what do I need to work on? So if it's a pre-assessment, post-assessment kind of thing, they can set the goals for themselves for that unit. If it's a post-assessment, I still need to go back and work on this, then they know they're not done.
So students fill this out?
Students fill that out.
Okay.
I like them filling it out in multiple colors where they can say, the pre-test, post-test, whatever. They can do the same paper. Because that way, they've done it and if they own it. I don't think I gave you this one actually, but this one if I was gonna monitor one kid, for like progress monitoring, I made this kind of to track, like I've got a kid who is in intervention and we're trying to work on this concept. I'm gonna track how many modes of representation they've got. So this is, I can send you this one too, I did.
Yeah.
But it's really that idea of tracking. Each day I look at that, are they getting more modes of representation? I would not do that on every kid. I would use that checklist when I'm doing it on the bulk of the kids. That's for progress monitoring a kid in intervention.
You talked about having students do an evaluation of themselves and determining goals. I find that to be a big struggle for me, just based on time.
It
What
really
is
doesn't take
your-
them long to, when they have that kind of a template, really what they do is they go through, they circle, and they respond. It's a reflection. It's after you've given the test back. When you give the test back, they look for the grade and then they're done. I want them to go through, and that takes 5 minutes. I got this one right, this one right, this one wrong, this one, so they don't circle anything if they got it wrong. But they do circle the ones they've got right, and then they say, I did well on dividing multi-digit numbers and dividing decimals.
I guess what I
need to
think
go back and
though,
work on adding
from
stuff.
a lesson standpoint is it takes 5 minutes for them, but then tag on 3 minutes before and after, so
For
now you're almost at
transitions.
10 minutes.
But I think
of
it's
the
worthwhile
lesson.
for self-reflection. I think that's one of the things that's on that EQUIP quality review rubric when we look at lesson and unit design.
Oh, I agree.
They say you need a self-assessment piece.
What is the estimated amount of, for a quality curriculum, are the amount of school days at minimum aligned with what is the expectation? Like, should we still be under the, how many school days?
180 school day year,
180
you mean?
school days, or should we be looking at year-round schooling at the state level? Like,
Well, the issue is
that's
that
25% of one day would be spent on that in our district.
We have 44-minute classes, and on Fridays, just 40 minutes.
Correct.
And I feel that
could be
difference.
homework though. You can
homework,
say-
We're not
no-
allowed to take their tests home, they are not allowed to
Absolutely.
leave the room.
Right.
Yeah.
But although they can circle in school
In
and then
school,
fill out
yeah.
the evaluation bottom portion for homework and have it signed.